Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Art Journal with Iris. For this episode, I thought I would work in a different orientation art journal, just so that I can show you how I art journal in different formats and different orientations. So this is an A5 landscape journal. I start building up the background with some neutral colors and a key card, just kind of scraping it along the page. It's similar to a palette knife, but you do get a slightly different texture with a key card, so I quite like that. I'm coming in with another kind of low contrast, fairly neutral color here. That's a paper artsy in, I think, rose. It's a nice matte texture, and here I'm coming in with that palette knife and kind of rubbing it on top of what I've already done, and it creates a different type of texture, quite a grungy texture. Now I'm coming in with fluorescent pink, which, as you can see, is a much more contrasting color compared to the two that I have added before. So I add this one a little bit more sparingly in different areas. So as you can see, I don't do the same thing all over. I kind of focus on different areas and apply the paint in different areas rather than the same thing all over. Here I am coming in with some cadmium red deep, which is a red paint, obviously, and I am applying it with a brayer in a few spots so that each part of the page has like an area of interest. Here I am applying a layer of watercolors. I've dried the page really thoroughly before this step, and coming in with a watercolor. This is Lunar Black by Daniel Smith, and I am adding this with quite a lot of water just to add a kind of grungy textured layer. It's not so much about the color as it is about the texture that this watercolor creates, which is very kind of grainy and grungy, and it's a really nice surface I find to work on because it just gives interest to everything. Also because of the graininess, you don't really control what it looks like. So that's just something that I really like. Here I'm coming in with some water-soluble crayons. These are Stabilo Woodies, and I have this idea for this page where I'm going to add flowers, and here I am creating the kind of the background for the flowers and putting them in the different places, kind of like deciding on their placement and their number. I am adding them all over the page, but also thinking about placement in terms of overlapping the middle seam and having them coming off the page, because having stuff kind of coming off the page and overlapping with the middle seam, it really makes everything feel integrated. Here I'm coming in with a slightly darker color, and you'll notice that I've also left a space on the left page because that's where I am planning to put the face. The turquoise at this point is a really nice contrasting color because all of the colors I've added so far are kind of in the pink and red spectrum, and the turquoise gives a really nice contrast to those colors. I'm coming in with a little bit of water now to activate those crayons because I find that they stay very oily or like, I don't know, glimmery if you don't activate them. So I'm activating them and kind of rubbing it into the page, but not too much, so that you will still get a little bit of that kind of nice crayony texture shining through. I'm starting to build up these flower shapes now. Here I'm coming in with a palette knife and some fluorescent pink paint, and as you'll see, I am applying things very sparingly. So again, I'm focusing only on one bit of the flower. I'm not doing it all over, it really kind of helps create an interest. Here I am applying paint straight from the bottle. This is a blue, so again coming in with quite a contrasting color and adding something around the edges a little bit, making swirly kind of movements with my hand. And this is one of my favorite tricks. This is an applicator bottle with fluid acrylics and a little bit of airbrush medium in them, and it can create these really awesome fine lines that I love to kind of spiral and scribble in the middle of these flowers, and that gives them a real kind of energy and a real kind of abstract feel, and it's something that I really love doing. Here I am coming in with a charcoal pencil and sketching a very simple face. Closed eyes, a simple round shape for the nose, and then geometric shapes for the mouth. I sketch in a hairline, but then I come in with a wet paper towel and I get rid of that top of the oval from the face. So that was a guideline, and now I'm getting rid of it, which it rubs off quite easily with that charcoal. Before I go any further with the face, I add a layer of white gesso pretty much all over the face. As you'll see, I go over the charcoal. The charcoal mixes in with that white gesso a little bit and becomes a little bit grey. That's all fine. I don't mind about that. And I don't mind about going over the lines because I can just sketch them back in again. You know, they're pretty simple and I can kind of see through the gesso about where they are. After letting it dry a little bit, I come in with this catalyst wedge and I start kind of scrubbing over this gesso, and it kind of rubs off certain bits of the gesso and it leaves other bits on, and it gives a more grungy texture so that you don't really see those brush strokes so much. And here I'm coming back in with my charcoal pencil to reinforce those lines that kind of got lost from adding the gesso. So as you'll see, I'm not very afraid of making things kind of messy and grungy and letting these lines smudge and deliberately smudging things, because what I tend to do is I tend to add things and then cover them up and then bring them back. And when you do that, you end up having a really kind of complex piece of art because there's so many layers. Here I am coming in with some white acrylics to do highlights. So I do highlights on the nose bridge, on the nose, the tip of the nose, the eyelids, kind of under the eyes, the neck, the chin, everywhere that the light would catch really. I'm adding some fluorescent pink to the cheeks. And now I'm coming in with colored pencils just to kind of reinforce the lines and create a pencil scratchy texture in the different parts of the face. I tend to go quite lightly, but I also tend to put the pencil marks pretty much all over because I really enjoy the way that looks. This is a 6H pencil, so it's a very hard pencil, and I am making a circle around the eye. That's an element that I like to use. Okay, so here I am coming in with some turquoise watercolors in order to do some turquoise hair. So thank you for everyone who suggested different hair colors. For the first one that really appealed to me was turquoise or teal hair. So thank you to Grumpet JV and LJ Charles because you both suggested the same thing and I really liked it, to try and do something different. And so here, what I'm doing with this watercolor is I am putting in the suggestion of hair. So it's not so much hair with strands, it's more kind of an idea of hair. And I'm adding a little bit of a darker turquoise as well at the edges. And then I'm letting it kind of fan out and letting everything merge into each other, and adding more water towards the outer edges as well, so that it all kind of merges into the background. Here I'm starting to come in with some color on the face, starting with a little bit of color on the lips. The top lip is usually darker than the bottom lip, and here I'm kind of fixing the charcoal line at the top lip. I didn't really enjoy how that went through to the right, so I am adding some white acrylic on top of it. You don't see me doing this very often, like fixing something, but sometimes if something is bothering me or I have an idea of what I would prefer something to look like, then I will do something about it. So I would say that having a kind of grungy, messy style doesn't mean you have to embrace everything. If you want to change something, then you definitely can, and the kind of grungy style also lends itself to fixing a lot better, because the mistake or the thing that you didn't like previously kind of merges into a layer, and then you work on top of it. So I'm coming in with kind of very subtle watercolors, a little bit of the pinks, and now starting to put in the skin tone with some yellows and salmon colors. I have these two watercolors. One is a kind of an Indian yellow light, I think, and the other one is a more salmony color, and I always do one on that one side of the face and one on the other side of the face. It's just kind of something that I have started doing. I did it once and then I kind of always do it again, and I would recommend trying things like that too, where if you tend to do one thing often, it kind of starts becoming part of your style. And there's like this continuity between different pieces, and that's something that I really enjoy. And it's similar with art supplies, that if you consistently use similar supplies between pieces, you will really build up what looks like a style, even if you're still finding your style. Using similar techniques and similar art supplies in every piece and similar colors, that will really help kind of like create a cohesive body of work. Here I'm coming in with some blues in order to do some more shading. So shading isn't just always a darker tone of the skin tone that you've used. It can also be different colors, and that's one of the things that I really love doing. So putting a little bit of blue shadows in there, or turquoise shadows, or doing some more bright colors. Here I am coming in with some more of that colored pencil underneath the eyes, around the nose. Those are places that I tend to put those pencil marks because I really like that, and again, that's just part of my style. At this point in time, because of the acrylics and the watercolors, the page doesn't really take the colored pencil very well, but I can still make some subtle lines. Just coming back in to kind of reinforce those highlights, fix a little bit of a mistake where the highlights got rubbed off, and kind of just making things come back out again that got covered over by the previous layers. Here, this is a Stabilo Woody with it's a turquoise one, and I'm just reinforcing that hair so that it's a bit more colorful, and also to add a different texture to it. So the watercolor was a very puddly texture, and then the crayon has a more kind of grungy crayony texture. Here I am preparing some red ink, and I am adding water to it because I want it to be quite watery. And here you just see me testing it quickly on a different page. I didn't want it to be super stark, but because I wanted to go over everything that I'd already done, I wanted it to be quite washed out, but then still show up. So on some bits where it's already more dark red in the background, you don't see the writing, but on the other bits you do see it. And also, like in real life up close, it creates a really nice texture and just a really interesting background element. So in this bit I am just writing. It's kind of like automatic writing, kind of like subconscious writing. So I'm just writing what I think, what I feel, what just comes up to me. Obviously you could do something like song texts or a poem, or you could just do journaling, you know, like what you did on your day or whatever. It's I use it both as a technique, so as a way of creating interesting things that are happening on the page, and also as a way of expressing myself and putting some of myself into this page where, you know, I just have a place to put my thoughts and my feelings and kind of what's going on and what's coming up during the course of creating an artwork. And I really love doing that in different forms. So in this form you will see me doing it with letters that you could potentially read afterwards, although they're obviously obscured a little bit, but sometimes I will do like scribbly journaling. So there will often be a element of actual word journaling rather than just visual painting journaling in my art journals, and they're not necessarily there to be read either by me or by somebody else. They're just there to have been expressed. The lettering that I'm doing is just my own handwriting, but made a little bit more junky and uneven. So these are just my regular block letters, but I might change up some of the letters. So the A, sometimes it's like a typewriter A, sometimes it's just a lowercase a, sometimes I do the N the wrong way around. And I will change up the letters that I'm using. So sometimes I will use a uppercase letter and sometimes I'll use a lowercase letter, just so that you kind of create a very interesting looking, almost like a font. Now I am coming in with some white ink and I'm doing splatters. So when the brush is loaded at first with a lot of ink, the splatters that come off are very big. And then as there's less and less on the brush, when you tap it, the splatters that come off are smaller. So that's something that you can play with. You can see I've covered up the face just to make sure that there's no splatters going on the face. And I am focusing on the bits where the flowers are. So again, my advice is to not do the same thing over everything, because that would be quite samey, but kind of selecting different specific areas where you want to add a technique like that. Now I'm coming in with some watercolors, so different colors for the splatters. I dry the page quite thoroughly in between applications so that the splatters don't merge into each other and don't mix the colors. But yeah, it's just a really favorite kind of finishing touch of mine, because it really makes things look more interesting. So there we have it. It's finish this spread. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this and listening to this, and that it has given you some ideas for your own art journal or junk journal. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you will leave a comment and give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.